Hi, welcome to A Bite of Wisdom. Today we're going to be looking at Proverbs chapter 26. Um, the verse we're looking at is 24 through 26. It says, "Whoever hates disguises himself with his lips and harbors deceit in his heart. When he speaks graciously, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. Though his hatred be covered with deception, his wickedness will be exposed in the assembly." Yesterday we were talking in the epistle of First John. We were looking at how John was saying that if you say you love God but hate your brother, then you're a liar and you don't even know who God is. I think that the writer of Proverbs is totally in line with what John was saying, or will say in the future relative to the writer of Proverbs. People. I've experienced people who have a lot of hate and anger in their heart, and it's interesting because these people oftentimes will try to appear like they don't, and so they speak graciously, they flatter people, they do all of these things, but in their heart they're angry that they're not getting the attention they want. They're angry that somebody wronged them, and they're not going to get the forgiveness that they deserve. Hate, as we talked about yesterday, really comes from this place of selfishness. That somebody did something wrong to me, or I didn't get something that I deserved, or whatever it is, and so you're full of hate. We talk about like racism. Racism is based on hate. But it's based on fear and selfishness at the core. Somebody's like, oh, we don't want to let the inter-ethnic group come into our country. Whether it is at one point it was the Irishmen. We don't want to let the Irishmen into our country. They're lazy. They're stupid. They'll just take our jobs. Blah 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 blah. Now we don't have a problem with that. Now the bigger problem is around other ethnic groups. And people don't want to see that happen because they're afraid that they're going to lose out on something. Instead of seeing that people have something to bring to the table, they are acting from a place of fear. And it's so funny because these same people will be, well, I'm not racist, but... Whenever he speaks graciously, don't believe him because there's 7 abominations in his heart. And I love this word abominations because we're so good at using it in certain circumstances. The church world is good at remembering that God views a man who lies with a man or a woman who lies with a woman as an abomination, and we'll pull that out and beat people with it, sometimes very literally. But it's funny that God here is saying through the writer of the book of Proverbs that when someone hates, there's abomination in his heart. 7 abominations in his heart. Kind of reminds me of what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount. He said, whoever hates his brother in his heart has committed the sin of murder. Jesus is exposing the inner heart condition as to what our reality is with God. And a lot of times we look at that and say, oh, well, that kind of started with Jesus, but here we have it in the book of Proverbs. This is long before Jesus spoke those words. A person with hate in their heart has 7 abominations in their heart. These are things that are displeasing to God to the point that they are poisonous almost. It destroys any relationship that you have with God. And so when we get to this idea of hate, we have to realize that forgiveness is the cure for hate. We can't get to love until we go through forgiveness. And people will be like, well, I can't forgive them. You don't know what they did. The issue with forgiveness is not that we are letting someone else free. Forgiveness ultimately sets us free. There's a poison in our heart And, Pastor talked a few weeks ago, he was talking about how he had a splinter that got infected, and ultimately he had to go to the doctor to have it dealt with and leach all of that nasty, gross stuff out of that wound. If we don't get that out of us, then it will turn into sepsis and gangrene, and people have lost limbs and even died as a result of that kind of thing. And that's what unforgiveness is in our life. When we don't have forgiveness, then we end up hating people. We end up being selfish about our actions and our thoughts. We end up full of these abominations. And so if we don't get rid of those things in our life through forgiveness, then we have no relationship with who God is. So that's been our bite of wisdom today. I hope it's been just a really helpful idea for you, especially in this time where we are being so introspective. Let's find that forgiveness in our life. Blessings.